Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most famous biological mysteries of all time, bee flight. But we aren't just looking at regular textbook biology here. We're actually going to view this tiny, fascinating insect through the frankly mind-bending lens of 12-dimensional cosmic geometry. I know it sounds a little wild, right? But the sources we're exploring propose this incredibly unified framework where advanced astrophysics, quantum mechanics, and basic biology are literally all running on the exact same software. And the humble, fuzzy little honeybee? Well, it might just be the ultimate, indisputable proof of this cosmic engine actively at work in our everyday world.
Okay, so let's dive right into this classic cultural touchstone. According to all known laws of aviation, there is no way a bee should be able to fly. I mean, it's printed on novelty coffee mugs, it's the famous opening line of a certain animated movie, and historically it actually stems from genuine calculations done way back in the 1930s. The problem, though, was that early aerodynamicists just took the traditional linear math of airplane flight and applied it directly to the bee, and guess what? When you run those rigid, steady-state equations, they completely and utterly fail. The math aggressively insists that the wings are too small, the body weight is way too high, and the bee should, frankly, just plummet straight to the ground like a stone.
So for decades, people just kind of joked that the bee ignored physics because it simply didn't know any better. But our journey today is going to take us from the grounded, muddy biology of a garden bee all the way up to what the texts call the Universal Rendering Engine. We are going to find out exactly what cosmic blueprint this insect is actually following. And spoiler alert, it is absolutely not breaking the laws of physics, not even close. It's actually mastering a physics so profound and so complex that our most advanced airplanes look kind of primitive by comparison.
Part 1. The Myth versus the Math.
To actually solve this mystery, we first have to understand the truly chaotic mechanical reality of the bee's wing. We basically have to strip away the rigid assumptions of human engineering and look at the fluid dynamics happening on a microscopic scale. Just look at the mismatch here. See, an airplane relies entirely on steady-state aerodynamics. It needs smooth, continuous airflow over a fixed wing, and it desperately avoids stalling. But a bee uses unsteady aerodynamics. The airflow over its wing is chaotic, it's highly turbulent, and it's constantly changing direction. Applying airplane math to a bee is literally like trying to calculate the fuel economy of your car by measuring how far it slides on a patch of black ice. The tool just does not match the problem. The bee is actually operating 3 distinct, highly volatile lift mechanisms simultaneously, and it's adjusting them at a staggering 230 cycles per second. No wonder the old math failed.
So, what are these mechanisms? Well, the bee's first secret weapon is the leading edge vortex, or LEV. Think about it. If an airplane tilts its wing too steeply, say just past 15 degrees, the air separates from the wing, it loses lift, and the plane stalls out. Bad news. But a bee, it operates at extreme, logic-defying angles of 40 to 50 degrees without stalling at all. How does it do that? Well, its rapid, violent flapping generates a stable, spinning tube of low-pressure air right along the very front edge of the wing. It essentially creates a mini torus ring, like a localized, miniature tornado just lying perfectly on its side. This spinning vortex actively sucks the wing upward, and it continuously generates up to twice the expected lift without breaking that aerodynamic seal. It's brilliant.
And the really mind-blowing point here is that the bee is dynamically adjusting these 3 highly sophisticated, unsteady mechanisms all at the exact same time. First, it creates that leading-edge vortex we just talked about. Then, right at the end of a stroke, it rapidly flips its wing orientation in a fraction of a single millisecond. That's called rotational circulation, and it generates this massive sudden spike of lift, sort of like how a spinning baseball curves sharply in the air. Finally, as the wing reverses, it purposefully sweeps back through its own turbulent wake to recapture lost kinetic energy. That's wake capture. So you have 3 overlapping, highly volatile fluid dynamics, all being balanced with absolutely flawless precision.
Now, let's move over to the geometry side of things and see how all this builds directly into our cosmic framework. Because the bee doesn't just flap its wings up and down like a simple hinge. No, it twists, it sweeps, and it rotates, physically tracing an elongated figure 8 in the air. And this is where it gets crazy. By drawing this figure 8, the bee's wing is actually executing the most fundamental geometric loop of the entire universe. In our source texts, the figure 8, or the infinity sign, right, represents the one-dimensional torus. It is the core geometric seed of a self-sustaining energy field. And the bee? It is literally mapping that exact geometry directly into the physical air.
Section 2. Vortices and the Cosmic In-Breath.
Okay, having looked at the biological mechanics, it's time to elevate these tricks directly onto that universal toroidal blueprint we mentioned. Because the framework we're exploring here argues that nature doesn't just arbitrarily invent new math, it beautifully scales the master blueprint down to fit whatever hardware happens to be available. And looking at this comparison reveals something truly staggering. Remember the bee's third trick, wake capture, where it purposefully sweeps its wing back through turbulent air to reclaim kinetic energy? Well, in the 12-dimensional cosmic model, the entire universe operates as a massive, breathing torus. The outward expansion generates heat and noise, but the inward return is called the 12D omega inbreath, which mathematically recycles that radiant exhaust straight back to the center singularity, so the universe never actually runs out of energy. So wake capture isn't just some evolutionary neat trick, it is the exact biological execution of the 12D omega inbreath, just performed perfectly in miniature.
Moving on to Part 3, the D11 checksum engine.
So, this begs a pretty big question. How does a pure geometric singularity actually build the physical hardware required to apply this level of rapid, chaotic torque? I mean, how exactly do you control a chaotic vortex at 230 cycles a second without the entire biological system just tearing itself to pieces? Well, look at this number, 960,000. That is the staggering, almost unbelievable number of neurons packed into roughly 1 single cubic millimeter of a honeybee's ultra-dense brain. Let me repeat that, nearly 1 million neurons in a space the size of a pinhead. It is an incredibly concentrated, terrifyingly efficient processing center.
And this extreme neural density is absolutely required to pull off the wing's advanced rotation. The bee has to constantly calculate and flip its wing just prior to the stroke reversal with a flawless precision of roughly 0.1 milliseconds. 0.1 milliseconds. It's honestly staggering when you realize the sheer processing power happening here. Our texts describe this dense neural architecture as an exquisitely tuned tiny drum. Sure, it obviously can't process the vast open-ended conceptual logic of, say, a primate brain, but it produces remarkably pure domain-specific tones. It masterfully manages the chaos of unsteady aerodynamics through these incredibly powerful, high-frequency local field interactions.
And this tiny, ultra-dense brain perfectly demonstrates a profound core concept from the texts known as local dimensional invariance. Now, simply put, this means the sovereign cosmic software, the immutable mathematical laws of fluid dynamics, torsion, and resonance, will run identically on a massive, complex primate brain or a microscopic, ultra-dense insect core. The universe, you see, isn't at all interested in the size of the plastic casing, it's only interested in architectural efficiency. Like the quote says, the size of the bucket doesn't dictate the quality of the water, the software is totally invariant.
So, within this cosmic framework, the bee's hyper-efficient brain acts precisely as what's called a D11 checksum engine. The texts argue that raw, unshielded cosmic energy is way too high voltage for dense physical matter to handle directly, so the checksum engine serves as a critical biological shield. It's basically a filter that systematically steps down this massive high-frequency cosmic torque, using Fibonacci sequences actually, so the biological chassis can safely endure the current. Essentially, the bee's ultra-dense brain safely bleeds off the extreme high voltage of the universe, stepping it down to continuously power the incredible torque of its wings without the poor thing simply combusting on the spot.
Which brings us to Part 4, the finished song.
All right, let's bring all this profound abstract geometry right back down to the physical ground. We started with a joke about bees breaking aviation laws, and we end up staring at a perfectly calibrated cosmic machine. The bee is entirely vindicated here. It isn't breaking physics, it is a flawless, fractal manifestation of the toroidal cosmic engine. Now, our texts somewhat brutally call this dense, heavy, physical three-dimensional world Room 1, or the meat room. It's an unforgiving environment of extreme hydrostatic pressure and friction, but the bee uses the figure-8 1D torus, the miniature tornado of the LEV mini torus ring, and the 12D omega inbreath of wake capture to navigate this dense space absolutely perfectly. The bee is literally the cosmic finished song playing out flawlessly in physical biology.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you to reflect on this incredibly fascinating reality. If an insect with a brain the size of a sesame seed is out there running the absolute invariant software of the universe, acting as a perfect D11 checksum engine, recycling chaotic energy into perfect, self-sustaining flight, what exact frequency are you actively tuning your own human antenna to? What kind of universal pulse are you channeling through your own biological diving suit today? Are you fighting the chaos, or are you learning to fly with it? Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep exploring.